Welcome. I'm Jim Tootin. I am a professor of history. I actually get to be the Knox Professor of History here at Juniata. And this morning, as you know, we're going to hear from our current and most recent preceding presidents. It's unusual and a really wonderful opportunity to have three presidents who can make it back. And they had to come a long way, as far as other parts of Huntingdon County and Centre County. So that maybe says something about the place that Central Pennsylvania and Juniata holds inside of them. We don't have a ton of questions, but we are going to see how it goes. And if we have time after the questions, then we will take some questions from the floor. And we have a Juniata alum, Mike Ford, who's going to run the mic when we get to that point. So I will briefly introduce them, but although I suspect for this audience they need no introduction. Bob Neff, as we all typically know him, Robert W. Neff, was president of Juniata from 1986 to 1998. Tom Keppel, 1998 to 2013. I bet you can tell where this is going to go next. And Jim Troja, of course, 2013 to the present, into our 150th year. I'll also acknowledge the one acting president we had in that time period, who I think is also in the House, Dr. Lauren Bowen. So the first question for them is about what projects each of them tried to prioritize during their presidency. So I think we'll go chronological order to start.
Well, I was given a priority before I ever arrived because the board decided that they needed a change in some of the athletic facilities, meaning the stadium at the football field and also the track. So I arrived with one of my priorities already established. But it fit my overall. I felt my number one priority was fundraising, growing the international program, support for the Peace and Conflict Studies program, undergirding the environmental station, and growing the relationships between the college and the town.
Well, that sounds familiar. I would add enrollment growth to that. Very much the same kinds of priorities that Bob had.
Can you hear me okay? Yeah. I wish I had an agenda that was not given to me as I was coming in, but there was no shortage of needs from a facilities perspective that I think deserved attention when I arrived. I think about the building that is right across the street. I mean, when I think about projects, I think when Dr. Bone and I started to think about the renovation of Beagley Library and the gift from Tim and Kathy Staton, which really energized our ability to do that, I'm not sure any of us had any idea of what the renovation of that facility would do for our campus. It has been an absolute game changer for us. The students use that facility. If you're not here, I mean, it is used all the time, and it is basically the living room of our campus. So, and we knew Beagley needed some attention. It was old and it was tired, but never could we have imagined what Staton has become. I think, real quick, some other things that I think needed addressed, and I want to say too, all of us have served at times where the demands were a little bit different, and I think one of the things that I'm sure Tom and Bob would have liked to have done more of was on the accessibility side, but there were other needs and other demands. I felt as I came in, we needed to do a better job of providing some accommodations to those who had some mobility challenges. And so accessibility was an interest of mine, trying to get some elevators in places like Good Hall, which is one of our main classroom buildings. We had an elevator over in Ellis that worked about 50% of the time. And it's a very, that's probably generous. Very public building, so we needed to do a job there. Some recreational space, so getting a soccer, lacrosse complex, or tennis complex done was important. We're starting to work on some of the residence halls. So those projects, what I would characterize as really integral to the living, learning space of Juniata was kind of the top of my agenda.
Mentioning Tim and Kathy Staton reminds me, I interviewed Tim about a week ago, and because we're in this space, I'll mention it. On his first day of classes, he came in to this hall for one of his, I think his very first college class, and as he said, I didn't know what it meant to be a college student, and I came in, I had no pencil, no paper, and he said, I stepped off one of these aisles next to a lovely young woman, and she had pencil and paper. And I said, you think I could borrow some?
Kathy was more
and that, of
than
course, was Kathy.
Kathy, yeah.
So the second question has perhaps some parallels, but it's a little different perhaps because it's not necessarily project-based. But what decisions that you had to make during your time are you most proud of?
Well, I think I want to finish what I was assigned by that early board, which was to raise money for Knox Stadium and also for the track. And it also led to a number of other athletic projects. And I would say having the fitness center was something I didn't see, but I think is absolutely essential. When I looked at the fitness center when I first arrived, it was atrocious. And we can be thankful to Sam and Martha Brumbaugh that they bought up a Nautilus Center and then provided $300,000 to get that fitness center in place. And I think that affected not only our athletic teams, but also our student body. But in any event, we did raise the money for Knox Stadium and also for the track. But and Knox did give to that project. But the reason you're the Knox professor is because he gave his greatest gift for endowing that chair. And I think he got honors in history. And if I go into details of raising money with Knox, meeting with Nordstrom's the day Monday after sales and that sort of thing, meeting in Sears Tower the night before a game in Chicago at 1 o'clock, and he's coaching the next day, which tells you something about Chuck Knox. But his real commitment was to a liberal arts education. Maybe I should interrupt myself there. And I have other things, but.
Yeah, I think a lot of us forget about the Great Recession because of COVID. The Great Recession in September of that year, where stocks were falling, there was no bottom. People were worried about their jobs. We were worried about the college. We were worried about enrollment. And we gathered everybody together and said, we're not going to fire anybody. We may not have salary increases. We may not be able to do a lot of things we'd like to do, but we're going to be better coming through this recession. And I think that stimulated a lot of effort that helped make us much better at the end of that process than other institutions. Harvard was borrowing money to meet payroll. We never had to do that. So I think that was a really good event that brought us together as a community and focused us all on doing our job and moving us forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think similarly, and I know you're going to get to a question about challenges, but that how do we not think about COVID
Right.
and the pride that I felt at the time, it would have been the summer of 2020, of working toward bringing our campus back that fall. Our students wanted to come back, our faculty wanted to be back, but we had to do so in a space and in a time that there were a lot of unknowns, and we had to do it with safety in mind first. And I probably can think about our team coalescing around that moment and thinking about the pride that I had in being able to deliver for our community a safe return to campus in the fall of 2020, which was a heavy lift for our community. And I think about the role that our faculty played in delivering the curriculum and the courses and in ways that supported our students at that time, led by Provost Bone. It was an incredible moment. I think about the Believe campaign, and the reason it was named the Believe campaign is that nobody really believed that we could raise $100 million back in 2015. So we stretched ourselves, and we ended up, as most of you know, raising close to $130 million. That went to affordability, to our faculty in terms of endowed chairs, professorships, and the like, and strengthening the co-curricular experience here. So I think about COVID, I think about the Believe campaign, I think about getting nursing off the ground, which I think each of us have studied that over the time, and for good reasons didn't pull the trigger. Again, thinking about COVID was the impetus to finally pull the trigger and say we need to go down this path. And I give our board a lot of credit for believing in us to go and do that, and now that program is approved. I think the launch of graduate programs, which has helped diversify our revenue source here, is very meaningful to me. We had graduate programs when I got here. We have added to that mix. And then finally, I think about, to what Bob said earlier about Town Gown and the work. I don't think Sarah Worley is in the room, but I want to lift up Sarah Worley. Oh my gosh, you are here. Oh. I mean, I'm almost going to get emotional thinking about what Sarah has done in terms of community engagement. We don't talk about it a ton, but I would say that our Carnegie classification, what we've done in integrating our students with the community here locally, has been a game changer for us.
Right.
We had good Town Gown through each of our presidencies. There are ups and downs, of course. There are struggles. We all have, I'm sure, our various stories of dealing with the borough. But what we have done with community engagement, and Sarah Worley's efforts particularly, has been nothing short of miraculous. And I give her all the credit. She is a dog with a bone in that space. So I'm super proud of the work that we've done in a curricular way, because now it is it's a required part of our curriculum of have community engagement, also a global engagement requirement. But now as a resident of Huntington County, and this is my home, and seeing the transformation that has taken place with our students in the community in really powerful ways to help lift up Huntington County has been, it's been remarkable and extraordinary. And Sarah deserves a ton of that credit.
I wanted to say something about the campus master plan because I think it changed the character of this campus, and it also shows the cooperation between presidencies as well. The campus master plan was designed back in 1991 by the instigation of the trustees, and a firm out of Baltimore, Cho Wilkes and Ben, then designed this campus in a new way. One of which was to close 18th Street. And I think Fred Binder may have tried to get 18th Street. And I think it took a while, but I think the last couple years of my presidency, we got 18th Street. But it also included the change of the enlarged campus, which the Winton Hill property which is where the soccer field and the field hockey fields are now. But it also enabled the campus to move out to the road so that you had parking that was going to be displaced by the closing of this campus. And here I want to commend Tom, because the completion of that campus plan happened in, I think, just as I was saddled with something my first 2 years, I think you were saddled with that for the first 2 years. And that has changed the character of this campus. And what hasn't been said here is one of the most incredible engineering feats was the saving of Founders Hall. No one ever tried to tackle that. Tom did. I was here, and I don't know whether you invited me for a prayer or whatever, because, and you need to say, this dropped 4 feet, right? You should comment on it, I mean, because it's incredible. Because we were all holding our breath because that thing could have come down, so you should comment on
Yeah, it was even worse than we thought.
it. Yeah.
But I really credit the architect, Bear Dixon from Memphis, who also did the Hallbrenner Center, by the way, who looked at Founders Hall and said, we can save the front part because it's reasonably stable, but we can't save the back part, and we need to take the back part off and replace it. And it's one of my favorite projects, actually.
Yeah, boy.
But, and again, it was just in time. And it's become a really great space, well used. Jim Laxo suggested we put English and history in the building, so it'd be an academic building as well as an administrative building at the center of the campus, and it's now, of course, the symbol of Juniata.
Jim, can I mention one more thing that Bob didn't mention, and I know there might be mixed reaction in the room about this, but one thing that I commend Bob Neff on is tackling the change of the mascot from the Indian to the eagle.
It's on my list, but
Well,
no, but please, I'm glad you're doing it.
I didn't mean to. I didn't mean to preempt it. But here's
No, I'm glad you took it. Notice it's not first on my list.
Here's the issue. Here's the thing. Bob did this at a time where it wasn't in vogue. It wasn't forced upon him. And when you read the history book from Earl Kaler, back when that took place, there was not a movement. But Bob found it to be inconsistent with the values and the humanity that Juniata stood for, and said, not on my watch, we are going to move in this direction. It was a lot of controversy. But Bob Neff took a hit on this at a time where it wasn't demanded of him. And I thought, in understanding that history and understanding now where people have moved on mascots, we were ahead of the curve by 25 years. And that's a credit to Bob Neff and taking that on, which was a really, really hard thing. I've met a number of alums who to this day have pain over that change in the mascot. It was the right thing to do. Bob deserves a ton of credit for moving us in that direction, and for the right reasons too.
Thank you.
This is really an example of what happens. Yeah. When presidents change, one example was the master plan for the campus, which Bob got done, and he handed it over to me. Another one is he changed the mascot, and I could say, he did it, I did it.
Well, Tom, maybe I'll piggyback on that, because I think near the end of your presidency, I remember you and the board worked together on changing the presidential house. And that was not a thing you had to do. You could have said, well, I'm going to finish my presidency out here, but you said, I have no idea who this next president's going to be, but I know what it's like to be a president. And my memory is you said, the next president may arrive with a young family. And if they do, this house would not be real suitable. And so let's take an opportunity, take a chance to build a different one. Yeah. And that meant the next president didn't have to go, can we renovate this house? Because it needs work.
Yeah. The president's house had lots of issues with it. And we were going to spend a lot of money on renovating it. And in the end, it didn't have the spaces we needed to entertain.
Right.
And so this house came available, a new house came available. And I wanted to take the heat for that rather than putting it on the next president. So we convinced the board. It was not a unanimous vote, by the way. One of the few non-unanimous votes in the time I was here. And anyway, we purchased the new house. I think it's worked out pretty well for.
Yeah, the house issue was also an issue under Binder's presidency. And he felt the same thing. It wasn't a large enough home for entertainment. But the trustees did not like the idea of enlargement, so they gave him half of what he was asking for, which was just an enlarged living room, not an entertainment space. So really, that took your effort, Tom, to get the right space.
So Jim Troja already alluded to one of the questions that I wanted to get to, which are these, the different challenges. This is very much a historian's question, I apologize. But when I think about the times, right, COVID obviously, 9/11, the financial crisis of 09 and 10. But I think it's worth saying a little bit about those, and I know you've already alluded to them in a couple cases, but what kinds of challenges beyond Juniata did you have to navigate in the context of your presidency?
Well, we had a budget crisis back in 1996. I wasn't as fortunate as you to not disrupt. It really disrupted the campus life very much because we did cut back on staff significantly. The budget deficit for the following year, I think is 97, was 1.8 million. And the thing that hit us at the same time was the cutting back of state aid, I think by some significant figure. Declining enrollment, and I would say it was the most difficult period of my presidency because it left a lot of scars. And it actually led, we did pull out of it. We had a balanced budget the year before you came, and enrollment had gone back up. But you don't work that out of your system. It's there. And it really led, I think, to the transition. And the other thing that happened was that two of my VPs, one retired, and one, Don Moyer, who always liked the West Coast, was given a job on the West Coast. This is right after all this happened. So that he left, Bob Hatala left, and it seemed to me that this was a good time for a transition. But I didn't want to lock you in, so we hired two people for 1 year so that there could be a transition when you arrived, and so you could have your own people. And I think that worked very well. I have another story related to that, but that's enough on that for now.
We hired Jim Laxo as the
Yes.
provost. He was acting provost. And John Hilly for development and ultimately over enrollment as well. And they were here for 15 years. It's
Right.
an unusual situation where they were here for a long time. And actually, we did the same thing then for Jim because
Right.
those two positions were open and Jim could then hire his persons. So it's an interesting transition between presidents. It doesn't always work this way in higher education. Sometimes presidents do not help the next person. But we were really fortunate that what Bob did and what maybe I did helped Jim.
Yeah, I think that the three of us are all sitting here talking this way is a remarkable thing in itself. But it says something about the institution. We're talking about lengthy presidencies. I was the 10th presidency in the 120th year of the institution, and there is the sense of continuity that has occurred over time, which has built the strength of the institution. And I think it's one of its remarkable traits.
For sure. I mean, I think it goes without saying, you look around at higher education today, the average college president serves about 5.5 years. And we've got 40 years between us, and I think it speaks volumes about the community, and that even though we disagree with one another, I always talk about us being like a family. You can squabble, but you're going to hug it up at some point, and you're gonna make up, and we all have to serve in the interests of our students. And our faculty do that in extraordinary ways. Our staff do that in extraordinary ways, and it allows us to perform the jobs that we do because we know that we've got the support that we have behind us. And the remarkable continuity that exists here is one of those things that I look on so fondly. And it's so important to provide that kind of stability at a time of disruption in higher education today. And I just want to say, I didn't get a chance to say this at the top, but I stand on the backs of both Tom and Bob for what they have provided for me, and it is truly a blessing and an honor to be with both of you as we get a chance to share a little bit about our experiences today. And I just want to say thank you publicly in front of everybody here.
We should probably say thank you to Joe Park and Joanne Eisenberg, who really ran the Office of Presidency.
Where are they?
Joe, oh my. And Joe, our kids would say thanks to you as well, because I had one, in another position, I had an administrative assistant which never allowed anybody to get next to me. Joe always understood what was going on in the family, so it was a tremendous, yes, I'm glad you're recognized.
We were talking about it before we formally began, and there too, y'all were all saying how much stability and consistency your presidencies had in terms of all that support. Joe Park and Joanne Eisenberg, on to the president. Relatively low turnover in that area as well. So this next question is one of my favorites. How has Juniata shaped you?
Well, I have to be careful here. My history with Juniata started when I was 1 year old. My father was a commuting student here and got his degree in 1940. In 1946, he came back as the professor of religion, and I lived at the corner of 18th and Moore. That building is no longer there, it's been torn down. So I walked to Alpharetta Grade School past Good Hall for 3 years. And when we received the Clayton Stottlemyre exhibit, the art, the night he came to finish the gift, he was sitting on my right side. And I suddenly realized I knew this guy. I don't remember the play, but I played the role of a child in a play in Oler Hall, and he was my father in that play. And that was from 46 to 49. The problem here is that Dottie came to Juniata. I was a Penn State person only because I was an ag. If I had not been an ag, I would have been over here. But I spent a lot of time here. I think I spent more time here than I did at Penn State. I didn't have a car, so I had a hitchhike from State College here. And I told you that I lived in a home at 18th and Moore. I knew that was then owned by the Yoder family, who was in physics. But the upper 2 floors were rented out to students. So that's where I stayed. Paul Yoder and his wife never knew that I was staying there overnight the whole time I was here, and that was over a 4-year period. And I could go on. Since both our children graduated from here, I wouldn't say how, I think the original question, how's it changed me? It's formed me. It's formed my life. And I'm sure all of you feel the same way. There's something substantive about the interrelations. I had a good friend from State College who was in the administration at Penn State. He wanted me to take him down through the town. And he said, he just shook his head. What do the students do? I said, what they've always done, form relationships on campus, strong campus activities. And I think I'm sure that everyone sitting in this room will say, Juniata formed me, and those relationships go on.
I'll get to the transition part second, but this story reminds me of a story that I've shared with a lot of people. When I accepted the job at Juniata, my wife, Pat, called her college roommate and said, we're going to this college in Pennsylvania that probably no one's ever heard of here in Tennessee. It's called Juniata. And my wife's roommate said, oh, that's where Uncle Homer taught. Homer C. Gill. So it's amazing. Amazing coincidence. Well, I think I've been humbled by Juniata over time because we've got so many people who have done so much work for Juniata. It's really quite amazing. This place somehow attracts people that I've found are very, very nice people. I don't know if you've discovered that as well, but I've been humbled by that.
When we met in my office to talk about the book, which by the way, he didn't mention, he's writing the next 25 years of history from 2001 to 2026. So Jim, thank you for taking that project on. You asked me this question in my office. I've had to really think about it. I mean, it's become who I am. I mean, Juniata is our home. Jennifer and I and our kids, I feel like this is our community now. And I think it's humble comes to mind. It's also taught me the importance of authenticity, because when I was hired, I had some great advice about trying not to be somebody that you're not in this job. This job is hard enough to try to pretend to be somebody that you're not. And this place has allowed me to be my authentic self, for good and for bad. I mean, there are some things that I would certainly look back over, 12 and a half years that I regret. But I always try to be true to myself, and I think, being next to these two, I think they would agree that, we get hired to do this job, and you got to do it to the best of your ability in ways that speak to who you are and to what you're trying to represent, and not try to be something that you're not. And I think Juniata has allowed each of our leadership to be personal and authentic in ways that hopefully have been supportive of this community. Seth Ruggiero, class of 2013, in his Bailey oratorical speech, as Jennifer and I are watching the Baileys on our computer in our home in Tiffin, Ohio before we came. It was after I was hired, but before I came. The prompt that year was, what advice do you give President Troha before he arrives to campus? Yeah, oh boy, he was right. I wanted to crawl under the couch after that evening, but one of the quotes that has stuck with me, and I think will always stick with me, was Seth said at that time, President Troha, don't change Juniata, let Juniata change you.
Wow.
That was from a student.
Yep.
And I think that's spot on. Like, don't come in and try to create something that doesn't need to exist. Let this culture, let this place work in tandem and integration with what you do. And that was awesome advice. One other small story, as I think about Tom, I think about the impact. I think about imposter syndrome, and I had all kinds of it when I was starting here. It was April, the faculty trustee dinner. Tom is being honored at the faculty trustee dinner in April of 2013. Jennifer and I are in the audience. I don't know if our kids were there or not. But honest to God, if I would have had my Apple Watch monitoring my heart rate, they would have taken me out on a gurney, because Tom is being honored, and they were going through his 15 years of success. And I am sitting in that audience just sweating bullets. Like, how can I live up to that?
You did.
How can I possibly live up to that? And so the standard is set. And I felt so empowered in that moment, scared as shit, let me tell you, but also empowered by the Juniata community, by the leadership that came before me, to just lean in and do the best job that I possibly could. That sticks out, that memory sticks out. That faculty, I mean, if literally I was wet after that night of hearing all the things that Tom had done in his 15 years. That shaped me in so many ways, and really set a bar for me to try to attain in this role.
Thank you.
In 1996, Lauren Pope had his book, Colleges That Changed Lives. Juniata is one of 3 in Pennsylvania. And what he indicated is that the college transformed students as they were there, as they transform leadership as they're there. And Calvert Ellis, this was long before, this is way back in the 40s, he said he hopes he lives long enough to see that colleges are not judged by the entry scores of their students, but by what happens to them over time. And I think that's the essence of who we are.
Well said.
So my last question is, what do you value most about Juniata as a college, but also as a community?
I took a quotation out of Earl Kaler's book, and this goes back 30 years. Someone was come back to, it was an alumni reunion, and after that, it was a graduate of 1970, so this is back, he came back to campus, and he wrote to one of the publications, "Why has Juniata remained a large and positive influence in my life? Juniata graduates feel traced," and I don't understand this word, "to an emphatic spirit that pervades the Hill and cannot be described in a college catalog. Whatever the reason for it is, this spirit, which fosters such strong ties among alumni of all ages, is rare in modern society. But at Juniata, it's found in abundance." And I would say this college is the antidote to what is happening within our society. We're not bound together by affection that's developed in our time here. And these ties last a lifetime. I still get, and Dottie and I get, cards from Henny and Joni Gibble designed for anniversaries, birthdays, and that's continued for all this time. And that's just one example. That's an essence of what it means to be a human being. That's what the best education is about, is how we can express our humanity in its deepest sense.
Good point. It seems to me that one of the reasons I came to Juniata was people wanted Juniata to get better. Lots of places in higher education want their institutions to stay exactly the same. That was not the case. When I talked to trustees, to faculty, to students, they wanted Juniata to be better. than it was when they got here. And that's a rare thing in all kinds of organizations, but sometimes especially in higher education. And I think this is what's happened here. It has gotten better. It's gotten better by what Bob did, better than what I did, and now better what Jim is doing. That's a pretty rare thing.
Those are hard to beat. Good gravy. The first thing that came to mind with this question, and I probably don't say it enough, and I will moving forward, it is the differentiator at Juniata is the relationship that our faculty have with our kids, our students. It is different. It's personal. It's about mentorship. It is just different. And the longer I'm in this chair and the more presidents that I speak with at other campuses, they don't have it.
Yeah,
They don't have it. And I think that goes back a long, long way. And our faculty deserve a tremendous amount of credit for carrying the torch of the relationships that both of you talk about, the authenticity that exists in those relationships. I mean, I try, Dr. Bowen knows, I give our faculty their due. I try to. Some of it may come across as maybe not as sincere as they think, but every day I am thankful for the work that our faculty do in the classroom. And not just in the classroom, but it's beyond the classroom. It's when they graduate and the mentorship that they serve, writing letters of recommendation, attending our students' weddings. I mean, that bond that exists between faculty and students is just different here. And I don't know how that started or where it started and what generation it started, but I can assure you, if you're sitting in this audience right now, it is strong and it is real and it is appreciated by our students. And my daughter Madison, who's a graduate of 2020, felt that, feels that. That's the first thing that came to my mind. And then the second thing that I think about, you know, the uniqueness of this place are the traditions. And as I look at these panels, and we think about some of those moments that make your experience special, whether it's Raff Regatta or Mountain Day or storming or Bailey Oratorical, those traditions help bind us as a community. And you think about Mountain Day as, it's just a day off, it's kind of fun. Those are moments that spans generations. That is the tie that binds us. That is the thread through our experiences that make us feel, you know, Juniatians, as Juniatians. And so those two things, Jim, for me, is what makes this place unique.
At the major recognition of donors, the keynote speaker is the winner of the Bailey Oratorical. It's a student. And that, to my mind, is saying this is the measure of an institution. This is what has been, I don't like to use the word produced, this is what someone has become when they're here. And to have the quality of the, I just amazed at the quality, and of course I think that has come through the Bailey Oratorical, because I think it's the winner of the Bailey Oratorical that normally makes that presentation. Is that right? Or
I don't.
It's not always, but they're usually in it.
Yeah.
And I think that an institution at the moment it's talking about fundraising, that the model of its character is expressed by a student who gives a speech is everything. It's exactly what you're talking about.
Those are all of the questions I had, and that I told him I wouldn't make up questions on the spot, but you can. And Mike Ford has the microphone, and if you would raise your hand, he would be glad to come. Mike, down front.
Is this live? I just want to add to what they were just saying, and I would say that one of the things that binds us as alums is the core curriculum. You know, that it may be a little different for each generation of students, but we all had that experience of sharing a core curriculum designed by the faculty for the students.
I don't have a question, but I do have another comment. And the faculty is great in the development that we've had with the faculty, but it's not just the faculty, it's the staff. It's the Hilda Nathans
Yeah,
of
you're
the
right.
world
Yes.
that you remember years and years after you cease to see her every day. And it's not just the faculty, it's just everyone that's here. We are a big family.
Yeah, you're not wrong. And I probably should have added the staff. I think the differentiator for me, Kathy, after having worked at some different places, that the closeness of the faculty and the kind of relationship our faculty have with our students is different. A lot of the places that I've been, the staff, of course, have had relationships with students. Something's just a little bit different here. The closeness, the sincerity in which faculty lean into their students is just different. And that's what I was just trying to articulate. Not that staff don't have impact with our students as well. Right here, Dan.
This is for President Neff. I recently understand that, excuse me, that you and Juniata played a significant role in establishing another campus, the campus of Westminster Woods. Could you tell us a little about that?
Well, one of the things that I felt was a tragedy was that there was no retirement facility for retirees. And so one of the last things I worked on was getting a retirement facility here. There is a side story to that. Actually Maya Lin and one of her compatriots designed a very modern retirement facility that would have gone on the back side of the Peace Chapel. I had been working with the Presbyterians at the time, and that was just a little bit too radical for them. It was on a long, it was a Danish model. But yes, one of the things that I feel strongly about was that there were no place for, here they'd given their whole lives and had to move away. And as soon as the retirement facility was completed, the first thing that Elizabeth Ellis did was to move back to Huntington because it was there. And plus you preserve vital guidance from retirees to an institution. So I'm glad you mentioned that because to my mind that changed the outflow of valued people to this community.
I'd like to pose a tough question to these three presidents, and I've had the privilege of serving here at Juniata as a faculty member during the presidencies of all three of them, only half of Bob Neff's, but I remember with nostalgia and some frustration one of Bob Neff's strategic priorities, which was to strengthen and enhance the humanities. And I think one of the things that's very sad as we look at where not only Juniata is, but where higher education is in general right now is we've lost in some ways the commitment to the role of the humanities within a liberal arts education. And so the question I'd like to pose to the three of you is, what kind of ideas do you have for ways that we could try to revitalize the humanities and the performing arts here at Juniata?
Well, I'm glad you raised that question because I listed as one of my failures was that. And I'm not trying to overthrow STEM, but I think that the arts, theater arts, I mean, to have a black box theater, 104 in all Pennsylvania, to have no performance there, but I never felt it should come back in terms of a major. I thought Russ Shelley did the incredible job of what music was. Absolute the best performance, but not a major. I think it would be very hard to bring back majors at this point. But clearly high-skilled people do not want to be simply oriented towards a job. I mean, when you think of Russ's celebration, all these people, no music majors, but unbelievable performance. And I feel the same way for theater arts. I think skilled people want another outlet other than themselves. And I felt so sad that that program sort of fell apart and never went further. I don't know what the answer. I don't think it's majors. I don't think you can bring back majors, but you can appeal to people to perform, and as another outlet for their talent and artistic achievement. And I still think there could. I think you would have people acting if the people were there to provide guidance to them. Anyway, that's.
Well, at least symbolically, we moved English and history to the center of the campus. That's one thing. But that's not enough.
Yeah.
There's a wave going through this country that is away from the humanities, unfortunately, in my opinion, towards the creating majors.
Yeah, I mean, we're in the receipt of that. I mean, here, the demand for many of those programs just isn't there, and we have to speak to, in some ways, where the students want to be. And so, but it is required, I think, upon us to expose them to programs that they may have not had access to in secondary school. But certainly you look at ACT testing data and you look at the programs and what they want to study, it just doesn't exist as it once did, which makes it really hard for us to have the breadth of opportunity here. That doesn't mean we don't stop trying. And Henry, you and I have had this conversation. We have to find a way to continue to lean into the humanities. And I speak about it all the time of what graduate schools and employers are seeking today in terms of skills, and they rushed in the humanities.
Right.
It's those
Yeah,
soft,
absolutely.
essential skills that are developed there. It is the arts. It is in the languages. It is communication skills. It's about having a certain amount of the right attitude and enthusiasm and opportunity of looking at and challenging yourself in some different ways, which is what the humanities are about.
Right.
It's just unfortunate
absolutely.
that I think the youth of today and schools of today aren't nurturing that at a younger age, and so we are then getting students to have to sort of help get them to the table in that space. But let's make no mistake about it. I mean, we are an educational institution, but we too are a business that we have to maintain some financial sustainability and offer programs that students are seeking today. And unfortunately, some of the programs that you reference, Henry, are the ones that we don't see as much today as we did 15 and 20 years ago. And that's just part of the harsh reality of higher education, and it's unfortunate.
On another element is environment. I wanted to say that the field station has a 100-year lease that was finished, I think, one of the last 2 years of my term. And because I didn't want, we haven't talked about environment or environmental studies here, but it's something that we need to talk about more often. But I'm grateful for that contract because that protects the field station over a long period of time.
Okay, Bob, I'm going to get back to the mascot change. Only because when I was playing football in the 1960s and beyond, these guys still have problems with that change, okay? Now, it's not you, Bob, but it's today, how we depict, the eagle, okay? It's an eagle. An eagle looks like a river hawk. A river hawk looks like a blue jay. They all look the same, and they sound the same in ways. There's a million eagles out there. Why can't we be the Oneida Eagles? That
I'm no longer sitting in a position of authority, thank God.
Oh yeah, you wanted the Muskies, right? The Muska Lounge.
Well,
right?
I'll tell you what my wife wanted. It's not fair to her. She said she thought a turkey was a very lovable bird. It's true.
Well, I just think that, that tying the Indian to the Native American, issue into our mascot would make us unique. Number one, like Nittany Lions. There are a million lions, but there's only one Nittany Lion, okay, or Nittany Lions. Oneida Eagles would be, tying all kinds of things together. Okay, let's start a movement.
I shouldn't have brought that up. I knew that was a bad idea.
No, it's not.
Let's see if I can do this without getting too emotional. I was one of the oppositions for years and years. And I have to bring to the attention of the gentleman that when we named our mascot, we gave it an Indian name. The name of our mascot, you probably think, is Alfie, and that's absolutely correct. When it was nominated as a suggestion, it was nominated as Alpharetta, Alfie for short. And that was done to tie, by the nominator, to tie the Indians of our day with the Eagles of today. So we do have some connection there. I also want to let you know that if you go to the alumni office, you will see a crystal memorializing the Juniata Indians. So we have to get over it, and I did sort of.
That is the end of our planned time. Thank you all for coming out early on a Saturday morning. And I'll ask you to thank our presidents. We certainly hope you have a fantastic rest of your homecoming family weekend, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you, everybody, for coming up.
Thank you. Thank you, all you. All right.